Yeah, I'm going to get a quick look at this real quick, just for the lighting right now. I guess it'll have to do for now. But yeah, as a matter of fact, I just want to do real quick. I just got this hat like a couple of days ago, and I had a skull cap, but seems to be like one of those things that yeah. So I'm trying to find another skull cap, and it was like this, what you're looking at here in my hat, but a skull cap with a couple of buttons on it, and all that about skull caps is like kind of like new here recently, the last 2 or 3 years, and I don't really know if it's just a designation from some projected thing about the year 2020, 21, 22, and 23. Okay, it's kind of like it's almost like really almost kind of like I'm kind of like still thinking about that Barbara Walters and Hugh Downs thing, and ultimately getting to something about Barbara Walters with the television series The View. And it's really, I've been like looking at this area with geographics quite a bit. And I mean, so looking at the 1024 gigabytes being like 1 terabyte, and actually like Highway 11, FM 1128, known as Massey Highway, Old Manville Highway, and on through like Manville, Texas, being Masters, and going all the way through, I think it's towards Iowa Colony. But anyway, yeah. In any case, yeah, so like yeah, Iowa Colony being all that, alphanumeric 132, and quite a bit about my thoughts of some connectivity of binary numbers in computer programming and language that way, of the binary numbers involving like Western Auto, and ultimately getting to the thing about the alphanumerics 131, 132, and the alphanumerics 141 that way, being like a thing about the Roosevelt New Deal Act, ultimately getting to California, and a whole bunch of stuff about the alphanumerics 247 as well, and yeah, all that stuff. But anyway, yeah, so I just wanted to do it real quick just to kind of get a look at it really kind of like what I'm kind of thinking about right now. But anyway, so yeah, there's some other content that I was wanting to think about because of here recently, but I'm gonna have to actually think about it, and I'm gonna just get a light, because this the fabric that it's made with, as compared to like my skull cap, the similarities are like real close about the appearance of like the rainbow. I think it's like real cool. It's really why I got it, and it's kind of like and I'm trying to find my skull cap that I had, and get a new one again. So hopefully it won't be just continual again and again. Yeah. So like I'm trying to maintain some like discipline and prioritization, and professional mannerism, and yeah, all that stuff. So anyway, yeah. So like I gotta get another one. Okay. So yeah. So hopefully that'll be like real soon. Like yeah, because I think it's like really one of the cooler ones, the way it's designed, and I like this hat as well. But anyway, this fabric, it kind of presents a little bit of a, I don't want to say really polyester, although it kind of presents kind of, when the lights kind of, depends on what angle, or the, if you want to call it the density or brightness, kind of has a little bit of a reflecting, kind of look like almost like a reflective type of light, and almost kind of looks like a contrast thing. But it's, yeah. So anyway, so like my skull cap that has the same color like the rainbow designs, kind of in a different perspective because it's a skull cap. Was a little bit more flat, not necessarily reflective, based upon what the difference between the types of fabric. But anyway, yeah. So like I'm trying to get a good setting here. It's already going on like 4 minutes and 10 seconds right now. So yeah, I'm gonna have to think about what I was going to talk about, because there's quite a bit anyway. So yeah, there it is. And yeah, real quick, I don't know what the deal is. I've presented the question to 611, and the acronyms about the thing about the operators and all that stuff. But anyway, so ultimately getting to like talking to 611, about certain factors in the misappropriation and allocation in the Mississippi, and what Amazon.com, in Texas, or Pearland, Texas, and all that stuff about, ultimately it's getting to, yeah, the schematics about the triangle, the biggest mouth of the Delta in the Mississippi River, and all that stuff, right? So anyway, so like in any case, it's almost like the situation of like the Euphrates being the pronunciation, and you know what that really is in importing and exporting. Um, or really even a method of banking that would suggest maybe a degree level above of like a circuit and database, or I don't know if I'd really call it database as far as like the live communications is, and what live is as compared to maybe recorded. If pre-recorded almost seems to be the distinguishable difference of identifying a live that has not really been like involved with any type of vetting. That's my thing about if a live issue like streaming is normally suggested normally. Um, I mean, if the only difference between a pre-recording only identifies a live recording that has not been edited um, as pre-recorded that way. Um, yeah, so my thing about the YouTube.com, on my like YouTube.com, it's like continually, getting like even the phone manufacturers with the mobile phone communications, like the Pearland, Texas area seems to be like ridiculously not really cool at all. Having to have the issue whether or not if a Wi-Fi manager or the deal about the the webmaster. I mean, for real. You know what that is to presidential terms in office, like throwing information. I mean, like years ago about what's made available as being seen and heard on television. That might even suggest what participation is or not, or even retroactive presidential administration for real. But the thing with this is that really it seemed to be like the deal about my thing about having the standards as a drummer that I've chosen, like really ever since really I started really getting into my drums, really, just using, what I listened to on a radio, ultimately getting, what was then a cassette and now compact disc, and really it's been transitioning with the availability as an option between like compact disc and like MP3 format, MP4 format, and the iPod thing, and really I'm really planning on converting, all the way to MP3, MP4, but really, like as you can see right now, I'm in a tent right now. So I mean, one of the things I'm going to probably separate, but I'm going to include this to keep my mind more in a disciplined, prioritize, direction is kind of like really focusing on like the commercial venue, okay, of living quarters, and it's kind of like here's the thing is that really, and my thought of like what Sarbanes and Oxley. Financial instruments and SOX compliance is, and I've never really ever heard anything or anyone talk about it. Um, and what that is to a neighborhood. I mean, obviously, it's been like virtually everything I have not talked about is really getting to what really seems to be, the issue about like information that I've covered already. And the thing with this is that really, if neighborhoods are really, you've heard all that, urban, suburban, and subdivision, and get for real, or what that is to maybe what some thought of like third world might be is some issue of like um, maybe maybe underdevelopment in a way, but I wouldn't necessarily say that as far as what that only means to maybe not even having availability of landscaping. Okay, in any case, so like get away from the primitive thing about the nature into the civilization thing about it. But anyway, like so like I've like really been thinking about that because it's kind of like at this point really, I've been really thinking about, as far as, my direction, and not be presenting, issues involving interrupt bypass or decision whether or not if electronics being provided to Pearland has just been to be whether or not if a U.S. patent is only the suggestion of a North American Free Trade Act, and in the way of like even a NATO peace treatise uh, organization, NATO, or the practical application of proper English numerical composition. Kind of like when you see the piece, sometimes it's silent. Like I've seen it and heard it. I've seen it more as NATO, North Atlantic Treatise Organization, as compared to. But I have heard that in reference in combination with both, with the P, like uh, North America, North America, North Atlantic. Let me repeat that. NATO, NATO. Okay. Is that 1530 30, that's like 50 in it, yeah. Yeah, okay, so it's kind of like, in any case, sounds like NATO, with a P in it, and it's almost like the tractor and a protractor thing between like the 180 degree and the alignment of parallel universe. And it's like it's almost getting to, like the 3 point on, mount on the backside with the PTO and alignment of parallel universe and like the rainbow thing and like Fort Stockton. And it's almost like the deal about, my birth here to such a degree that me even thinking that, wow, how could I have like not known when actually it's looked like maybe potentially that maybe the accusation is like, who you kidding, I mean, with all the alphanumeric names and be here and just realize, it's kind of like, you got to be kidding me. But anyway, so like really, in any case, so like I've been really thinking about the commercial venue as far as like living quarters go. And my thought about programming on television, or the thought of an accusation that um, projected estimate might only be the forecast of like maybe someone other, and not necessarily or the awareness or acknowledgement of like a direction that might even suggest maybe even a neighborhood. And it's kind of like there had been a point in my life that when I was like realizing something about the New York Stock Exchange and what the deal is to like livestock or I mean livestock, are you kidding me? It's kind of like well, I mean, is it really getting to the issue of like a gross national product, in a way of like whether or not if SAN software is going to be the securities and annuity network or the storage and area network based upon only, if it's going to be like a degree level like of human capital, um, or what, goes beyond, the thought of non-negotiable, non-transferable itemization. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about is really, I mean, even seeing it or realizing it and be involved with it and not even really, I mean, it's just so not solved that way. Below, the degree involving a circuit or, I mean, that about business and corporate law, identifying, what management is. If demographic studies is only the accusation of maybe neglect based upon lack of experience and, not even realize that whether anyone knows the difference or even if they claim to be a Republican and really can't even prove they even have control of even, thinking that they have the option of identifying themselves in some political term of, whether even demographics only reflect maybe what television programming is as a fixture in real estate as compared to what a fixture is in a commercial venue of like a living quarters. I mean, it's kind of like really it's like a living quarter, but at the same time at the grocery store, it's finally like gotten to the point to where it's like visibly. I mean, in my mind, not even a question. Um, to the point of like the thing about the EBT. And my thoughts about like a Roosevelt New Deal Act and how the FDIC and alphanumerics are like 22, or the UA and the word attenuation, the UA thing, and you've probably heard that as a union term, um, more so than maybe not, But I mean, if it's ultimately getting to distinguish the difference of what only that might mean to experience as compared to maybe academics or with academics and not having the experience in my mind only suggests the telekinetic role of the pen, or a spiritual factor of the thing about the alphanumerics that ultimately get into the language, the English language that way of ultimately the mental telepathy, mind is God thing, and the Holy Spirit and Jesus Christ and Secret Service and all that stuff, and it goes on and on. Okay, but I mean, somewhere between the alphanumerics 177 being like, subliminal message, the way it's pronounced and spelled, minus the 26 thing being, 151, like mental telepathy minus God, or the 26 thing. The thing of it is that, really, I mean, if it's really getting to the RF redundant frequency, I mean, the thing of it is that if programming is only suggesting a conflict of interest or, some idea of like Zion and 1,000 Years of Peace, and like all that's on television, on the K television network, I mean, hey, get for real, okay? I mean, if it's ultimately getting to like what a W-2 form, all it means is a PG-13 rating, or like what's made available to maybe be an issue of like the seems the difference between like Reader's Digest or consumer electronics, or what programming is that way, or what the redundant frequency being the RF of 24, or now being like the Apple iPhone, the SE between how, I've like really spent years like looking at this stuff. But the thing is that when I think of like of a commercial venue of living quarters, just here recently, I was like, really, the last 3 years I've been, really, it's only because of a pastel blue plastic bowl and something about this very location that really, I mean, I did not even remember and come to the realization, yeah, for real. So anyway, so it's like that pastel blue bowl, like a salad bowl. It's like a deal in the 60s, okay? And Barbara Walters, it's got like all this memory minus de facto as compared to what's given in, like all the way up through the Supreme Court as like normally given the appearance of like, why a U.S. patent is not a copyright, or, why the Fifth Amendment is not a nonprofit organization, or why Bitcoin is not cryptocurrency, and several other factors by that type of comparison having appearance thereof, but not, I don't know if I would have to call it like having a form of godliness but denying the appearance thereof. It's ultimately even got into why litigation, although a corporate term, and as far as like corporate terminology, litigation is virtually guaranteed almost every single time a corporate terminology, okay? And, many people their perception might not really even be the programming on television. I mean, when does litigation start? Or, or what that is in meaning and value, or, a method of banking is ultimately getting to really, the real issue about, just, really ignoring, and distinguishing, everyone's own thought, like even, the ignorance is not really an accusation of like a, maybe the way it's, the tone of voice, or, or ignoring it as like a personal decision as compared to maybe hearing it from someone else directed that might be perceived as being an insult, like, designating, the direction as ignorant as compared to one's own thought of like, ignoring it. I mean, it's kind of like an option that's a whole different perception and kind of like really seriously naive to even what the television is that way. Or what entertainment would be actually, only made available as maybe even accusation of not knowing the difference between a degree level or, just like accepted as a categorization and not even know what a demographic study is, or, what a liberal or a libertarian might only mean to publishers or a version that way, or the equator and operator, or what all that is, and, classified ads and what was in, like the newspaper now, even the thought of like, Facebook and Indeed, or, certain types of social media in a way of like, that reflect maybe, maybe going beyond, the categorization of employee into the degree level, beyond, what the thought of classified ads normally would mean to distinguish between the professional or, some thought of the general or the crafting skills, or certain factors of even high tech jobs, or difference between labor law, okay, and normally what labor law normally only suggests, maybe even to the thought of like a computer architecture and platform as compared to embedding and encryption, what availability is, or demanded standard of like the thing about an academic level, or you know rebel standards of consensual participation, or what all that is in night vision with like Abraham Lincoln. But anyway, so I was kind of like think about that because like really at this point, I mean, as far as like neighborhoods go, I'm kind of like I'm a drummer, okay, and it's like I'm like I'm born 1964, okay, and this year 2023. My thing about it, like a commercial venue, living quarters, it's kind of like my thought, like, well, who's saying that livestock is like a New York Stock Exchange is like something's missing, like livestock, or would that be maybe only what warehousing would mean to gross national product, or or in a way, even the misappropriation of allocation of even a domestically clause DC direct circuitry of like a international law of having fair use of like designating whatever might a fixture might be in venue or structure as a intellectual in the form of like royalty, and the thing of it is that really if a commercial venue living quarters only designates a commercial venue, not a neighborhood at all, other than maybe the potential of a thought of like maybe a television representing that mere fact, and as far as like all the programming on there might be thoroughly really not cool to maybe what only might be maybe a single difference between W television, W radio. or really anything beyond that. Satellite communication. The thing of it is that really, um, as far as like if it's going to be the issue between urban, suburban, or subdivision. Yeah, so I'm like really wanting to get like all above that, including really something about the golf course, or above like what's already like my thought about it already, really anyway. Or the two 9 holes being an 18-hole golf course. What the real deal is about method banking. Okay, so in any case, so like I'm a drummer, and like I've really been really focusing my attention towards my music videos using previous bands that I chose like through growing up, really throughout my entire life, really, that normally started out with singing in my early, like preteens. Um, yeah, dating all the way back to, like from like the late 1960s, probably around the, 1974, 1975, predominantly, until I got my first snare drum, yeah. So anyway, so like, in any case, yeah, so, anyway, my thought about having a commercial venue of living quarters, with like everything about recording, audio production, making music videos indoors, and like live there, and like right here, for real, and everything about it, and including transportation in the form of like a yeah, all right, yeah, and get it going with like at least my thought of like a national love automatically, and get into really um, what I'm really been spending like really decades really about really anyway. So like I've been like using Sander, and really yeah. The thing of it is that really I have original music, but it's been like really kind of like not cool. Thinking that ultimately just me talking like right now has been something that maybe the perception of maybe the accusation of willingness and knowingly knowing like all this is a projected estimate option in future, and ultimately getting based upon basically truthfully of just something of an experience. That had led to a whole different perception and a way of looking for answers that really I wasn't really finding that I thought that really I should have already found, after like quite some time of like looking for answers in a way, and it was just like not what it should have been until I kind of started going into the African-American linguistics. And in any case, so like I thought about the living quarters, commercial venues are living quarters, and what that is with communication, as compared to neighborhoods. And really, at this point, I mean, having like a 5 floor with like a basement, and I was thinking, well, why not, the 7th floor, for like the banquet issue, and the housing accommodations, and what it is, as far as like like a corporate headquarter home office type of like an enterprise managing factor of like a national include certain factors of like a region 0 and region 1, or what that is in the English speaking world, as far as like entertainment law, and manufacturing, distribution, and sales, promotions. I mean everything in accommodating like commercial professional meetings, as far as like organizing, and like really getting into it, beyond that, and finding the musicians, hopefully, in a local area. And really, the thing of it is that really ultimately, my thought about the commercial venue of living quarters, it's kind of like, well, who's saying who's dying? Or is that the only issue of like programming on television, ultimately experiencing something? And it's kind of like unreal sometimes. Some of the thought that someone thinking that practice as a drummer or a musician would normally do, unless they were given some born at a different level that would might thoroughly originate as a point of origin with original uh, informal training, as compared to maybe using or the thought of what dependency might only mean to manufacture geographic options of what availability means, whatever geographic that is, like in North America. Okay, well anyway, so like that's on my youtube.com, a considerable amount. And like I say, it's like real quick, like I've been playing drums for really more 35 more years. And simply and easily, at beyond really 3,000 individual songs of like all my drums, and really even singing on, and sometimes, I mean, it's really not a problem for real. But in any case, so there's been a little bit of issue going on getting into my original music, and And I don't really have to say it's frustrating, but I mean, at this point, I mean, who's anyone trying to kid, okay? Um, yeah, so like, my thought about getting above a neighborhood and like, what's maybe, the thought of a RF grid being used as a liquidable equity or, an overabundant amount of, potential as liquidable equity or, what that is in, real estate as compared to maybe what might be an automatic thought of like corporate um, terminology in the way of like commercial venue, or even really the thought maybe even beyond a corporate level, um, a little bit more beyond the thought of maybe corporate being over business law in a way of you know maybe what defines the meaning of how incorporation is actually manufactured in circuit, and ultimately even seeing or knowing it, or going beyond the thought of like a classified as in a way what uh, what that is and is not, or the thought of um, what is now like Univision, like at the intersecting Highway 59 Southwest Freeway at the West Loop 610 of like Univision is. It's kind of like the pastel thing about the the Harris and Houston, Texas area, and the 73 thing, or the Union, or State of the Union, and all that about American Amplified getting to the State of the Union address of like the 192 thing, as well as the word transfiguration, the Book of Thessalonians, and re-entering heaven. And yeah, I've been to a summit meeting, the AA thing about the um, American Amplified, and some idea of like attaching some American issue, separate, than what is normally given as a point of origin of like Israel and the Christianity thing. But yeah, so like in any case, yeah, so yeah, so anyway, I'm thinking about the commercial venues, kind of like really would like that, and really think about really um, getting something over than what I've already experienced of like a only what redundant previously might only mean is international law have fair use, of what liquid equity only might be an accusation or a claiming that management is only liquid equity in the form of like a neighborhood, presenting whether or not if the royalty issue is only non-negotiable land transfer itemization, the history of a mailbox, or whether if a direct deposit in really any bank, including the U.S. dollar in North America, is anything more than experiencing maybe the accusation, well, it's a checking account, whether it's a direct deposit or not, or claim some like deal about the switching and routing in the form of like Route 66, or what an account has with account number as compared to the routing number, the way it's pronounced, as compared to routine, or the deal about some idea of like some biblical reference, and what that is to like a dress code or an anatomy. So I mean, if it's if it's gonna have to be my thought of like going maybe beyond the aggregates of like a the M1, M2, and M3 is like the monetary, domestic, and gross domestic product of aggregates. Going through the circuit. Maybe beyond the itemization and circuit, and even expenditure beyond executive classroom. Just to have say what I have to say about it, or the Six Flags deal. And ultimately, it's already going on like 28 minutes and 28 seconds right now. But the thing of it is that really, thinking that having a living quarter, God, and like a 3-level like secure covered parking lot, and Hill HX50 helicopter. Really, at this point, everything that's really is kind of like if the accusation is only programming of a television, or maybe even like I've mentioned it before, convincing me really that family law is even a reality, and not be on television or like a YouTube or social media in the way that would I direct a lot of my titles on YouTube with like direct TV, and with the assumption that virtually everything I have to say is like directed to like every direction that I'm talking about, in the way that I am. My thought about a Wi-Fi manager or webmaster involving what maybe what a local area network might have presented as a hint or a clue, based upon my perception in the beginning, just using YouTube as a music video portfolio. And like I mentioned before, more than like 3,000 songs. But the thing of it is like on my YouTube.com, like when I was like really getting, it's kind of hard to believe that even have to have a concern about like anything in the immediate area. Like, or you got to be kidding me. So like what access means, or what the deal is about the importing and exporting, or practicing something that really is a perception of maybe only anticipation. I mean, is there like only authorized personnel? And I mean, is that only a factor whether or not the family law is even a reality based upon legal media and deposition, or some thought of like whether or not if some Washington D.C. factor of like the alphanumeric 130 being Washington, or a television and or electronic god or a telepathic map would only maybe reflect maybe what constitutional law might dictate as ratifying and codifying in some like religious venue of D.C. or some daring Christ issue with that, whether it's an initial or an acronym or abbreviation or whatever the case may be, between like constitutional law being ratifying and codifying, or whether if human capital is really the only issue as a point of origin, like would represent like a Native American Indian, being the bewildered behavior thing, being given a granted, deal about a reserve reverse a reservation in a way, whether it's a projected estimate option in future as a given, managing, in a more disciplined direction other than, what was only, perceived as being the need of, the thought of like being given, granted as like, hey, whether it's talked about or not, given as a managing factor. I mean, even realizing it sometimes is really maybe not experiencing something other than, only maybe a neglect based on lack of experience of like what is considered even a reputable standard or accepted as a level of like participation, or or whether that's accepted or rejected, or what that is. So my thought about a commercial venue of living quarters is kind of like, hey, who's saying like who's dying, or is that like just programming on television of K television and K radio, or maybe the thought of like what only entertainment might be the only accusation of maybe not necessarily the manufacturer's geographic option, but maybe instead maybe the accusation of like of manufacturing distribution, or maybe the accusation of upon request, or maybe if the only thought of like upon request had only been maybe the chronological order of like what has been like my standard, or some other issue maybe only having the appearance of at a different location, or something would only represent maybe something other than maritime law, or what is considered like a protected waters around the United States, might only be the thought of segregation in the form of like what a Native American Indian was given as like the freedom of like having a reservation and all this food, shelter, and clothing, and any type of education, or something about just be having a given in that way. Whether it be, I mean, why the Fifth Amendment is not the nonprofit organization. I mean, in every way of like a method of banking, or what the deal is, to television and programming on the K television, K radio, or like what entertainment is meant, even in the form of a summit meeting in Houston, or or what the deal is as a national security issue. Like, you got to be kidding me. I'm sure that many musicians that might like the sound might not necessarily maybe be the thought of maybe agreeing with like everything that some bands sing about, or in a way that might be maybe an accusation of a maybe on a headquarter, not necessarily, the thought of maybe what is a point of origin as, manufacturing and distribution. My thought being is that really, and really when it gets to it, ultimately, I mean, if it's really only the issue of whether distinguishing civil, as whether or not it's litigation, or, the difference between maybe only memory, minus the fact of being 35 or something about the NASA and Dodge and I-35, or the I thing on the backside of the U.S. $1 bill, or the pi r square factor on the backside of both sides on U.S. $1 bill. But my thing is that really I mean, at this point, I mean, getting and having, like I started out at 5 floor with a basement with like all the generators and everything like paid for. Why not 7 at this point when like there's 7 layers of atmosphere and all that pylon, stuff going down, geometry, trigonometry, and algebra, and, through calculus and like quantum, the 7, I wouldn't call it necessarily a spike, although, it originally starting out as a cone shape like a pylon. And it seems to be the more of the word a pylon involving transportation that way, and color code that way, even of the Coast Guard in the front lines of the beachfront, as far as like orange pylons normally suggesting an issue of caution, in the form of the orange as compared to what would be a traffic light of caution being the yellow, as compared to what night vision might only present maybe of the orange in a way of where the orange is giving the front lines of the beach run of importing and exporting and SAN software, securities, annuities, and network or storage area network, and what that is through the color code, at the front lines of the beach rather than the Coast Guard, or likewise, the thing about the terminology and the name, the NOM thing of maybe the VI or what entertainment law is through the television and programming of Vietnam as compared to only being the issue of like a name or the MSN. Yeah, so I mean, like really, and I mean, if it's ultimately getting to the year 2023 and all that, heads up stuff about surface to air, and the living quarter is a commercial venue, living quarter, and not really ignoring the bicentennial quarter, or maybe what a neighborhood might not be even if a HUD, a FHA or a HUD is like even suggested as um, a method of like banking in the form of like a registered charity. Um, or any thought of whether or not if a deed restriction will ever truthfully ever be identified. A deed restriction in most people's mind might be maybe the thought of maybe someone might not even be able to distinguish the difference between whether if a title of ownership is only the accusation of like a non-transferable, non-negotiable, non-transferable itemization because of a television in the home, or whether the person is assumed to not even have a degree level to even distinguish the difference between a deed restriction or a title of ownership, or maybe a projected estimate of that mere fact of a daily standard transaction as non-negotiable, non-transferable itemization in real estate. Or like really, who's dying on television, or it might only be the accusation of, something, of like biblical reference in the form, thou shalt not bear graven images, or maybe Washington, D.C. accusation, well, the retroactive presidential administration is still alive, or, the thought, going beyond maritime law, liquid equity that would suggest piracy as compared to maybe, intellectual property in a way beyond, the thought of an academic level beyond a local area network or internet protocol in the way of like that would suggest that maybe a distinguish the difference between like a constitutional law of like ratifying and codifying, or some more reality of like some kind of reality of like current affair of like the mayor's office, and proclamations and declarations seem to be like in my mind like a big deal of my birth year 1964, this being the year 2023, or distinguishing the Calamity Jane factor of the Pony Express, and what the horseshoe is through the ohms or 8 ohms, or what that is to redundant frequency, um, or what that is to a neighborhood, or thought of like a subliminal message in the form of a telepathic power, or is it like really the thought of like programming on television, or what professional witnessing means, and like protected estimate options and futures in a way, or maybe based upon achievement based upon a merit, would only be the accusation of like a claim that management has been presented, and maybe instead of maybe a political science term as maybe, hey, liquid equity is is within range. Maybe only the perception of maybe what service might only present as intended, maybe to be suggested. Uh, 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 maybe even of JavaScript, or what the script of life is, or I mean the whole entire deal about entire lifespan and what that is to intellectual property. Normally, and like entertainment law involving like intellectual property, like compact disc or DVD, involving audio production or like motion picture. I mean, according to the information in audio production, and how true it is, I mean, it seems like whether or not if the degree level is only maybe a dimensional clause of whether a degree is actually participating as compared to maybe only what is given as distribution as information, and with that thought and perception of maybe what might only be available, below the degree, including K television in the Houston area, or maybe the thought of like a PG-13 rating of like W television and W radio, or the W2, and what that really even suggests to my thought of 22 and 22, and what that is to like a Ulysses S. Grant, or the for Purple Mountain's Majesty above the fruited plains. Um, and America that way of like a Ulysses S. Grant and the forbearance seemingly to be the big deal of like a forbearance of like a Ulysses S. Grant involving even a GI Bill, or the Pell Grant and what forbearance is, and combine. I would pronounce it that way. I don't know if I'd call it a combination. I don't know if that's really might be later, but right now it's kind of like the combine, as compared to what a promissory note might not normally be perceived as a dot com or a dot com compromising compromise dot com promissory compromise. So I mean, all that stuff about discipline and professional mannerism and a degree level, reputable standards of consensual participation, or maybe not disregarded as maybe the carelessness and the discipline and prioritization. Obviously, when I realized that really, talking in a way that normally really didn't seem to be, the assumption that in any case, and it was just like a perception of when and where, not necessarily a requirement, 24/7, has become really the 24/7 thing about, terminology and actually present it that way, not necessarily a careless neglect based upon, like it doesn't apply, as it's really not even suggested that. I mean, really, because of the programming on like television and radio, the K television, K radio, and K television. I mean, and still in all that way, I'm really a little like not finding anything about that humorous in a way. And really, right now, that's why I'm thinking that. Really, I mean, as far as music video and audio production, and really, my thought of like participation. I mean, like a performance area as far as like the stage indoor and like music video for like live recording, like with the stage presence as compared to maybe the scenic thing and special effects, or maybe even a scenic scene about the music videos, as well as banquet area, the kitchen and everything. I mean, really, I mean, right now, I mean, really, I'm thinking that really, anything like a neighborhood presenting maybe the thought of only what liquid equity and management may have only maybe, really, I'm like right here right now, okay, and thinking that really that at that point, I mean, why would anyone want anything other than a commercial um, venue of living quarter, and maybe not be naive to what only availability as opportunity might not even be perceived as or suggested. And my thought really, if the Sarbanes and Oxley financial instruments of SOX compliance is just something that really getting a real answer from any degree level of like the real deal and what that is to the categorization of money, or even biblical reference, or what compliance is, might only be a suggestion of whether or not if it's going to get to a distinguishable factor of something that really not amusingly humorous at all to me in a way. Uh, there's quite a bit about that really, I mean, just a thought and direction of like what I might think that it seems to be with television, even the availability of information has seemed to be like a duration um, that is like manufactured to require memory, minus the factor of being 35 or NASA or Dodge, or like what human capital is to the state of Texas capital. Human capital, or like really any capital, human capital being obviously something in my mind now beyond like a local area, like a local bank, involving maybe getting above even having a need to identify geographically attaching what the U.S. dollar is, and what that is to maybe the source of the EBT as compared to like SNAP food benefits and like the Lone Star card, seemingly. I mean, even all that seems to be like even a direct deposit in the bank with the U.S. dollars becoming like having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof, and not having anything about supplemental security income, or some real issue of like annuity as earned annuity, not ignoring something about the EBT, or the English BT being 22, or what the FDIC is to like any local bank involving the FDIC and the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or what that certificate deposit is in banking, or a registered charity, or or really ultimately gets to my thought of like a diners club, and some years of like looking at the word and lettering on the US dollar, and ultimately getting to the HTTP colon of like a symmetrical asymmetrical value of like a 90 degree in the upper left of the circle on some, not all, but I've seen them. And if that's all the intellectual of a circle with like a 90 degree being symmetrical asymmetrical with only one quadrant, being 90 degree to the upper left in the Houston area is like automatically a Highway 290, all the way to like Austin, to the, state capital, Austin. Or, the thought of like Austin being 84 or embassy, and like something about binary numbers, but being all two numbers being used, sequencing, characterization, and 4, or what that is to 1965 and like 84, that way, like Austin Powers, Blue Bonnet, Imperial Legal, and like an embassy, okay? Well, anyway, so like that deal about HTTP code, that circle to symmetrical, asymmetrical value of like a 9 degree in the upper northwest, as compared to, my thought of like Univision. And ultimately it's getting to like the deal about the pastel, the 3 pastels and 1 black, color black, and like they use like 2 sets of 4, and it's like strictly, memory. I mean, it's just a glance, really not even significantly even having a need to think that there would be anything other than just like, seeing it. And it, like really not having anything other than just passing by, right? And now it's kind of like the pastel deal that really for the last 3 years, really because of a the memory of like a pastel blue bowl as like an early child, and like in diapers, I mean, for real. And all that alphanumerics about diapers is really seriously become the deal, like of a 1965 issue, like 84. Austin Powers Blue Bonnet Imperial Eagle thing as compared to like 13 stars over the eagle on the backside. As compared to maybe what 12 photo reserve banks, meaning only to one bank of being the 13. Deal about the 1992 in a way, unlike any other year involving a map. And even Lincoln Continental, deal about the Lincoln Continental and the rectangular hood ornament to a 9 degree in a 1992 map with a bunch of rectangles all over the entire United States identified as restricted areas in red, um, like the United States Code's annotated. And now it's kind of like now it's like the tolling issue between like maritime law involving import and export, as compared to going beyond front lines of the beachfront and like internet protocol, like local area networks, and now AAA of transportation, still being of like 200, and pro life thing about pro Jesus Christ of plenipotentiary, and even the bicentennial quarter and all that stuff, and ultimately it's getting to the thought of the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, and the AAA thing, and it's like it's ultimately getting to some like geographics, and once again to the Sprite, 21-ounce bottle, and the cap itself, and the design of a specific made with the cap. It looks like 2 baby rings, kind of like a Z, and some of the information with like the history of that symbolic representation. It is made with a 21-ounce cap on a bottle of Sprite. The symbol itself, I mean, it's exactly what that is, and it's really like a 2 boomerangs with intersecting like a Z, and that's exactly really what it is. Yet information with actually is presenting kind of like the J thing in the way of like the front lines of the beachfront, the seashell, and the design of the ear, and the tube effect. Okay, it's like a real intense signal processing effect that American DJs use sometimes. When like hey, like I mean, really, I mean, when American DJ uses that sound effect, I mean, it's like, I'm real sure it's like intensely not funny. It's like serious stuff. Okay, so anyway, yeah, so like it really gets a person's attention. I mean, without a doubt, for real. In any case, yeah, so that's what that seashell and that deal is that I'm saying, and how true it is with anyone else about that design on the Sprite. It kind of gives that kind of J look, kind of like a tube effect of a seashell, the tube shape of a seashell, as well as the ear, the aural design of the ear, all the way to the eardrum. Hey, I'm a drummer, yeah. So anyway, yeah. So in any case, yeah. So anyway, it's kind of like already going on like 49 minutes and like 12 seconds. And in any case, yeah. So like I'm going to try and stay focused. I might maybe talk a little bit again. Maybe later on. It's like I don't know any what time it is right now. It's probably around 4 a.m. Maybe somewhere around there. Maybe 3 a.m. I'm not sure, but anyway. Yeah, I'm gonna try and get some sleep, and I'm gonna try and stay, about the, getting all amphibious and staying above like a local area network, and getting, maybe the 7th floor commercial, then your living quarters in Hill HXS, and everything about the audio production and concert touring and manufacturing, distribution, and all the CEOs, and everything about the president and governors, and circuits and all that stuff, and like all the amenities and and everything about it, and entertainment law and all that stuff, like just like get it going, and have it like maybe the location like right here, right? So anyway, yeah, so like this is really what I'm really looking at and talking about like right now, and that'd be like really more than great, yeah. So anyway, yeah, so like I'm gonna like stop right there because I'm gonna have to take a break. It's going on 50 minutes and like 21 seconds. So anyway, there it is, yeah.